Hey, everybody. Ali here with the Lead with Meaning podcast. There's no surprise with who I'm speaking with here, Mr. Scott Leese. You know, Scott, for those that don't know, well respected in the sales community, what is it? Here are my notes here, Scott. 6-time startup sales leader, 3 times top AAISP inside sales leader, 2-time startup founder. You founded an organization called Surf and Sales, which I'm bummed that I wasn't able to make it to in February with your kind invite. But what really drew me to you, Scott, was just your unique way of being true to yourself and and sharing with the community, the only community I'm on with LinkedIn. But appreciate you taking the time, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ali. And I wish that we were able to have a couple more surf and sales events this year, but hopefully in 2021 we'll come back strong. Maybe we'll just do 52 of them in a row.
There we go. Well, Scott, I mean, I'm sure you've been online a lot. I had a pleasure the last few weeks in preparation for this conversation to listen to some recent interviews you've had. And I think some, maybe not all, know that you had some challenges, you had some medical issues, you had some struggles. I won't get into the whole story, but what stood out to me was, that unique quality you had of turning this challenge into an opportunity. And I remember you had shared a conversation with Brendan on the Seamless AI interview where you talked about a pivotal moment in conversation you had with your wife about, turning this struggle you went through as an opportunity to create a superpower, right? And I know I didn't articulate that probably perfectly, but maybe you could share kind of, for the folks that have challenge with the struggle, how do you take a kind of a circumstance like that and use it as a stepping stone, as an opportunity, so that it doesn't define your full story?
Well, I think what it does is it provides perspective, is what it does. And my health struggles, which are well documented and were brutal for years, and now are not fun, but tolerable for me. There's nothing like superhuman about them, right? They inhibit me, they hold me back. The superhuman or the superpower is my perspective is able to shift. And so a lot of things that we worry about or stress out about or get all riled up about, right? Those things pale in comparison. So it's much easier for me to make difficult decisions quicker, for example, because I don't really worry too much about, well, what if it all goes bad? Because I'm able to fall back on, well, I've probably, hopefully, already survived and been through the worst thing that I could go through in my life, and I made it out the other side. So if I make a bad, phone call today, or if I send the wrong email, or if I, pick the wrong vendor or whatever, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'll be okay, right? If I don't hit my quota this month and I get fired, whatever, I'll get another job, right? And that perspective, that ability to fall back on all the hardships you've already been through and to give yourself kind of credit for where you are, that's what I'm talking about when I call it, a superpower. And that ability, after you practice it, I've been in this kind of mindset now for 2 decades, basically.
Yeah.
It becomes, second nature. It's just automatic almost, right? So, we go into this COVID world, for example. A lot of my contemporaries were like, oh shit, what do I do now? How do I do this training? How do I, keep visibility going and all this? And I'm like, oh my God, everybody's at home. I need to be more and more visible. So I started working my tail off, like from day one. There was no pause or kind of stress or anxiety or paranoia about, oh my God, how is my business gonna, survive and flourish? I'd only been on my own for 4 months when all this stuff started. And instead of me, being held back or struggling, I just thought, okay, well, the opportunity here is to just dominate the airwaves. Everybody's at home. Everybody's going to have more time to learn and do, and I just went after it and got to work. So that's what I'm talking about. It's looking at whatever your circumstances are, having the perspective to know that It's not that bad. You can get through it. And there's opportunity in every kind of moment. That's the thing that I think, is a superpower of mine.
I mean, it's critical because a mindset is everything, and how our perspective is, and how we're handling things can greatly impact our ability to let fear get in the way. And I've talked about this a little bit. I geek out a little bit on the subconscious scale, and you look at kind of 0 to 1,000, and fear, doubt, anxiety are towards the bottom, and gratitude is on top. So it's almost the ability to kind of embrace. I've been through this before. I know that I've overcome worse challenges, and what's the fear in what I'm looking to accomplish here. How have you, because I know you mentor, you work with a lot of early stage companies, you work with individuals, for somebody that maybe hasn't experienced, that level of trauma or, challenge in their life, how do you help them overcome that negative defeatist mindset, kind of gain confidence, gain clarity on, kind of moving forward, if that makes sense?
Well, you certainly don't have to have been struck by the type of calamity that that I, went through in order to have perspective. I mean, so one of the things that I talk to people about is just learning more about their life and their circumstances and how they got to where they are. And, maybe somebody immigrated to this country, with $10 in their name and that's it, right? Maybe somebody was homeless. Maybe somebody came from a broken home. Maybe somebody had, addiction issues. Maybe somebody's, been through whatever. Like, we've all been through some shit. There's probably things that you've been through, Ali, that I think to myself, I have absolutely no idea how he got through that. I would never be able to get through that, right? And so it's not a competition. You don't have to go through some horrible thing, but we've all been through things. We all will continue to go through things. You've made it out the other side. What are the things that helped you get through that? Let's try to identify those things, right? What were you telling yourself? What were your habits like? Who did you associate with, right? And then once you identify those things, let's repeat those things now, right? Let's make them a part of our daily and consistent routine. Once they're a part of that daily and consistent routine, now it is, how do we amplify these things? How do we do it even better? So rather than having maybe 2 or 3 people in my close, tight network to talk to and get advice, can I grow that to 5? Can I grow that to 10? Right? And so you just slowly kind of, it's like a muscle. You're slowly building muscle, and you're gathering, strength. And so that's what I try to start with folks is, okay, come on. I know you haven't been through what I've been through, but you've been through something for sure. Let's talk about that. Let's identify the things that helped you get through that and succeed. Let's put those into a consistent practice and routine. And then how do we double down and amplify those things that are already working? And is there anything supplementary that we can add to your, routine and your regimen to keep you going down this path?
Great, because that's great, Scott. And I know you, I didn't mention in your intro, are also a best-selling author. And the reason I mention that is you talk a lot about process. And one of the things that you often talk about, and hopefully I get this right, put my sales hat on for a second, when we're talking to prospects and customers, we want to identify pain first. And once you identify that pain, then we can identify kind of a process optimization before we could even get into value. It's hopefully I got that somewhat right, but it sounds like you're applying the same principle almost at an individual level from a mindset. Let's identify that pain. What was that pain? And let's kind of, peel back the onion. Let's identify the process that either helped you get through that in the past, or a process that can help you get through that today. And then let's double down on that value so that we know how to do that. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, it is fairly accurate. And, it's very interesting because on some level, if you're mentoring or coaching somebody, you're trying to make a sale. I'm trying to sell you essentially on why you should change your mindset or some of your behaviors or your study habits or the actions that you take. I have to convince you that it makes sense to do that, and the results will bear fruit. And so in the example, that I provided and that you gave, it's like, yeah, I'm trying to get you to admit to me, Ali, that you've had some pain, you've had some problems and challenges. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about the value in, solving those things, which was me saying, well, what are the things that worked for you, right? Why was it important to fix those things? Why did it need to happen quickly? That's the urgency piece, right? What was at risk? What are we at risk of losing, right? What can we stand to gain if we do something quickly here? And in my experience and what I've been through, and I've talked about this in my book, but like, sales very much mirrors the recovery process and getting people to overcome addiction. And so people don't care to make changes in their lives unless they admit that they have this problem, understand why it is, worth fixing, conceptualize and agree that, okay, I need to act now before something bad happens. And then and only then do they really care about your solution or what you're selling. So as I'm trying to work with people, to improve their lives or their mindset or their sales performance, that's where I start. I go through the same process, whether I'm trying to sell a piece of software or I'm trying to sell you on, why you should make some changes in your life so your performance increases.
Wow. And I know you said this has been a process of yours for a long time. I had something similar when I was in school, 20 years ago, where at the end of the evening, I would try to kind of, what today is probably meditation. I'd say, hey, if I was off, I was pissed off about something was going on. I would go through this what, when, why, where, how process and kind of fine tune it, figure it out, and then deal with it. And to your point, eventually it becomes automatic, right? You don't really got to think through. You're like, oh, that's what's bothering me, right? And you can kind of grab it and not have it impact you a lot. For somebody newer in trying to, carve out, maybe they're not working with a professional like yourself. They're like, okay, I know that I need to make a shift and a change. They're willing to do the work. What's a good place to start?
Well, the best place to start is to actually start. I mean, so many people have good intentions and they want to do things and they just deliberate on it so long rather than taking action. So to me, the best place to start is to like commit and put it out there, maybe publicly,
Sure.
for example, right? So I do very well when I'm motivated, through peer pressure, candidly, right? So like if you and me and, Richard and Morgan and a bunch of other people that we know, we're all like trying to do something. The moment that I say, okay, guys, I'm going to do this, now I've stuck my neck out there.
Yeah.
And now I have a fear now of not delivering. So I'm going to do it, right? So increasing like my level of commitment or, skin in the game or whatever, that helps me a good deal. That might help, some other people who are out there. And then, have conversations with other people who have yet to do it. So, you can find community in people who are struggling with the same things you are. It's the reason why, people have workout partners, right? You got to go to the gym, accountability partner. Like, I will skip the gym today unless Ali picks me up and in the car and drives me over there, right? So, if you and I are both struggling, with our, I don't know, maybe we're struggling to hit like 50 calls a day, right? Well, you're my accountability buddy. Like, we got to push each other on, to do this. And so trying to find people who are going through the same things as you can be equally as important sometimes, if not more important, than finding a mentor or a coach who's like already kind of been there and done that. Because sometimes you look at those kind of people and you're like, wow, they're at the top of the mountain or whatever, I can't even relate to them yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's intimidating. And so that intimidation then manifests itself in doing nothing. And so I think it's important to try to surround yourself with people who are at the same stage of life sometimes and going through similar things. not to say that mentors and coaches are not great, they are, but I think it's also important to have peers that push you and motivate you and hold you accountable.
That's great. Yeah. Accountability, that's a big one. Cause I think one thing that I read this year that I talked with Marcus Chan about, who I had on the show, was Brendan Burchard's High Performance Habits. I was a big fan of that book. And the one thing that stood out to me is his self accountability. I think a lot of us leverage our goals. I know you're big on goals and OKRs and different things. And he's got a format of a daily assessment, morning and evening, a Sunday assessment. It's not just that quarterly type of assessment. So having that peer network group to hold you accountable, but also holding yourself accountable, right? One thing that and I'm curious to get your take on, Scott, is I think we all, especially in kind of the sales and corporate space, we have our quotas, we have these large objectives and goals. I have this philosophy, it's not just mine, but something I've picked up throughout the years, which is if we're constantly chasing the summit, you're always going to be living in lack. But if you are obsessed with the process on the way to the summit and you celebrate those wins along the way, you're always living in gratitude. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, when I set goals for myself, and I teach this, like, I'm setting microscopic goals.
Yeah.
Like, I want to win. I want the reinforcement, the positive reinforcement of, success and doing something right and progression. I'm somebody that sometimes has a hard time seeing the progression, right? So, if I focus on trying to, sell $1 million, right? If I'm not careful, I can beat myself up because I'm like so far away from it, right? But if I'm mindful enough to say, okay, do this action. These 4 actions are next. Now it's time to do, and all I focus on is on the process. It's counterintuitive, but the results just like take care of themselves, and people have written and talked about this so much, but so many of us still struggle with it, So I think working on micro goals is really, really important, right? Don't try to lose 50 pounds. Try to lose 1 pound this week.
Consistently,
if you lose 1 pound
daily,
this week, celebrate, right? Feel good about it. Pat yourself on the back. It's a win. And those wins reinforce us and give us the confidence and motivation to keep, pushing forward. So.
Yeah. And, I was surprised because I think a lot of people were really high on James Clear's Atomic Habits, over the last couple of years. And initially, because I'm obsessed with goals and tasks and things, and started reading the book, had a lot of buzz, and it wasn't really resonating. And then started to learn more about micro wins, learn more about the compounding effect of, daily incremental success of development, and seeing the long road, not just the short tail, so to speak, and how important it is. So that's cool. And I guess just to piggyback that, Scott, any tips you have for people on defining goals in a kind of a micro win area? Are you following an OKR model? Like, any recommendations?
What I do, I'll give an example and story of what I do that works for me. So, at the beginning of every year, I write out all my goals, and then I'll categorize them. It'll be like, financial goals, travel goals, family goals, whatever, right? All these different categories. And then I start to get really specific. So, for example, if I say, well, my family had a trip to Scandinavia, so we're supposed to be, I think, in Sweden right now, right? So that was a goal. So rather than just say, take a trip to Scandinavia, right? What I try to do is I try to get very specific. So I'd say, okay, how much will the flights cost? Where am I going to fly into? How much is it for the, Airbnbs, all this kind of stuff. And then I attach a dollar figure next to it, right? We wanted to put some fans outside on our porch. So rather than writing down porch fans, I wrote down 2 porch fans, $750 or whatever it costs. And so my whole goal sheet is full of all these things, but they're in specifics, right? So it's like, rather than just saying you want a new car, easy to put out there into the universe, but
Mm-hmm.
the specificity gets you closer to the goal. Well, what kind of car? Brand new or used? What color? What features do you want? What dealership has this? How much does it cost? Okay, how much do you have saved right now? All right, how much do you need to save each month in order to be able to purchase that car within a certain amount of time frame? Great. How many deals do you have to close in order to be able to save that much money? And that breakdown and that level of specificity around all the goals, I've found to be super, super helpful. And they're extra steps that most people don't take.
I want to unpack that. It's great, Scott. So one, there's two things I'm hearing here. One is clarity, right? So if we don't have a level of clarity to that level of attention to detail that you're highlighting here, like how do we ever expect to hit that target, right? So to the point you're making, how many of us, we have this goal, I want to have my $1 million number for the year, but we don't reverse engineer the calls, the emails, the ACV, so on and so forth. But so, what, I've read I read an article you wrote, not just on clarity that you just described, but on visualization, right? How do you tie in that level of clarity with visualization, and how do you add that to kind of your daily practice?
Yeah. So this list that I was telling you about, it's nothing fancy. It's literally the like note app on my MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Except that window is up on my computer all the time.
Okay.
I don't close it. So I'm staring at this sucker
All day long.
July 15th or whatever date. I've been staring at it for 6.5 months now, right? All day long, right? It is top of mind all the time. It haunts me when I look at it and certain things haven't been achieved yet or attained, right? Other things that I do, I strike through when I've got one done. And, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm used to getting a honey-do list from my wife on weekends and okay, get this one, scratch it off or whatever. I get a lot of satisfaction, as lame as it might sound. Like when I have this goal sheet and I strike one off that I attained it, I feel good about that.
Well, that's
right?
that checkbox, and that's that micro win we're talking about. You got to celebrate those micro wins, right?
And there's a visual representation for me because I'm looking at my goal sheet, and that one is, has a strike through next to it. And then I look at pictures all the time, right? Okay. So this trip that, we want to take. So my desktop background will be Costa Rica, right? And it's just reminders. And when I was younger and selling, we'd have different contests or trips or whatever. And I'd, put the picture of Mexico if there was a cruise on the line and all this kind of thing, right? But to me, the visualization is not like the dream board thing to me. It's, I can't escape my goals because I'm staring at it all the time. I used to tape them on my dashboard when I would drive around, when I had a commute in the Bay Area when I lived there. I can remember having some of my goals on my bathroom mirror.
Yeah, I still have mine there today.
It's just I want the pressure of not being able to escape them. I want to always be thinking about them, and I want the reward when I get some of them done. That's the visualization part, to me.
So I think the important thing, I guess, for those that are new to some of this and maybe not, is what Scott and I are sharing are some practices that we apply to our lives that, everyone's going to have different things that work for them. I think the important thing is to have as much clarity and definition and detail into what you're looking to accomplish and have it be front and center. It can't be something that you look at once a year and once a quarter. Similar to yourself, I have my goals in front of my mirror. It's actually one thing, I still have this old school, if you guys could see it, index card book. I've used this model. I still got other, technological tools today, but this is one that I've used in school where it's got daily, weekly, monthly, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. I write everything down. I flip through it all the time. The reason why it's always been so important to me, to your point, is it's front and center. And some of my best years are, you look through that, it's like a grocery shopping list. It's check, 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 right? So it's constantly in front of me. Have you applied any aspect of gratitude journaling, and maybe with just your life experience, you're living in gratitude because you've overcome so much from a health perspective. But, do you apply any gratitude into your daily practice today?
Yes, but not in as structured or formal a way as one might think. I mean, I talked about at the beginning of the year how I write all these goals
Mm-hmm.
out. One of the things my wife and I have done for a few years now is at the end of every year, we sort of write out all the things that we did and we achieved or we had fun doing and whatnot. It's just like, big long list if you really think about it. And you're like, wow, I have so much to, be thankful for. We accomplished, so much. But that's about it as like formal kind of documentation of it. However, I'm very, very mindful of gratitude and, the limited number of opportunities that we have, the good fortune that I have to be participating in some of these opportunities. One of the reasons why I do a lot of the things that I do in terms of, I always respond to everybody, every message I get, I respond to on LinkedIn. I don't use bots or anything, I don't even use programmatic systems to automate posts. Everything is like me and authentic and in real time. I build, communities like Surf and Sales and Thursday Night Sales and, Rev Genius and Patreon groups and all this stuff. And I talk to people all the time, for free, just giving people advice. This is my expressions of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and in the ways that I give back, and me trying to give to others the same opportunities that I've had the good fortune to receive. So I'm more of at least in my opinion, I'm more of a practitioner of gratitude than I am an author of it. Like I'm not journaling it, right?
Yeah. You're living it, you're practicing. And yeah, I mean, you and I spoke about a month ago now, and my first question was like, hey, why did you take this call? And you said the same thing, which is you feel like if you have this platform, what good is it if you're not giving back? And it's one thing that's always impressed me. Other folks that I've been able to speak with, like KD, like Morgan and others, and they share the same things. Like, you've always gone out of your way to be an ambassador, to give back and to support. And I wanted to ask you, and you're kind of touching on it now, like, what does servant leadership mean? And because I see, things like empathy and compassion and being there for your team thrown out a lot by all sorts of sales leaders. But then there's folks like yourself that are actually walking the walk and not just posting something about it. What do you feel is the kind of the role of leadership today to do some of the similar things that you're talking about, taking time for others, enriching with value, educating? Where do you see kind of that role today, and what do you think the expectation should be of leaders?
Yeah, I think this is actually a lot simpler than people make it out to be. My job is to help you get to wherever it is you want to go. Simple as that, right? I can't do that until I know you a little bit and know where you want to go. And I can't do that if you don't know that yourself. So I don't view my job as to help you figure out what you want to do with your life. I view my job as those people who know what they want to do with their life. My job is to help you get there. And that's the practice that I put into place. So you want to simplify everything. My job is it to inspire you? Sure. Is it to coach you and train you? Sure. But at the end of the day, all of those are just details. If I'm a real leader, I'm trying to help as many people achieve their goals and dreams as humanly possible. I'm trying to sort of train up my replacement. I remember thinking that way, when I was a VP of sales and had dozen managers under me. It was like, I need to teach Ali to be, the best sales director there is, because I need this dude to take my job, right? Because if I move on, I need the company to be in good shape. If I get promoted, I need Ali to be able to step into my shoes and do that particular role. So I think the role of leadership is to help as many people achieve their goals as possible.
How do we break the cycle of leaders that focus on, and I know there's a lot of responsibility that comes with kind of, and I'm specifically more talking about sales leaders that have a bag. They're more kind of metric operated. How do we kind of pivot that level of thinking to be more about how do I help Scott as a person attain the goals that he's trying to reach that might not have a lot to do with work. Maybe it has to do with mindset. Maybe it has to do with family, right? Because in the end, like that happy person is the one that's going to be most successful, right? So, yeah. And I don't know if that's something that it's not something I've seen a lot of personally in my sales career. I'm curious to get your thoughts on, are you seeing that, and how do we have people move more to the mindset that you have when it comes to leadership?
My take on this is there's so much nuance to it, because you say you haven't seen a ton of it, but I've been practicing it and seen a lot of it for 16 years.
Sure.
Right? Well, I've spent my entire career in very early stage startups where it's arguably a lot easier to be personal, right, than in big, huge corporations. So maybe one of the things, that shifts is people move away from this idea that a big, huge corporation is the best place to go work because it's safer and more secure and whatnot. I don't buy that. Maybe the right thing to do is to go to earlier stage companies where you have more of a personal one-on-one kind of connection as you're helping to build certain things. Other things that I think about is, just the more people like KD or myself or you or anybody, the more we talk about this other side, right? The more we kind of rage against the machine and the history and the like, well, this is the way things have always been done. The more we sort of dispel those myths and put into practice different things, awareness increases. Well, now you've got, people who are looking for jobs who refuse to go work at this place that is overly arbitrarily metrics driven, right? And not humanistic enough. They're like, wait a second, there's whole other sales orgs out here led by folks who do have a more human kind of take and angle on things. I want to go work at this place. And so the market can dictate the conditions. If people just start refusing to go work for bad employers and bad leaders,
sure,
those people are going to have to wise up and make changes, or they're going to go out of business.
And I think it's already starting to shift. And you're on the money. I've looked at some of the Fortune 50s, and I've made a conscious decision that I don't know if I want to be one of. I use the ticket at the sandwich shop, right? And then you try to find that balance with how early stage they are, so processes are still put in place and there's enough funding, and things of that nature. But I do think you are starting to see a shift with mindfulness meditation practices, more consciousness, more community give back within organizations, to kind of build on that. But I think you're right on the money, Scott, where the masses will dictate kind of how this shift occurs,
Yeah. I mean, look, we build more leaders. You know what I mean? You build more leaders who think this particular way, and the next, generation of leaders, they won't be caught dead thinking in this old school, late 90s, early 2000s, or, or even farther back kind of mentality. The profession is evolving.
Yeah.
Right. The way people sell is changing. The way people lead is changing. And you're not going to win by resisting that change. You win by adapting and evolving, right? And I'm optimistic that, we'll continue to head in this particular direction.
So I don't think you and I shared a lot of it. We did share some commonalities with things we're reading, things we're listening to. And one of the things that stood out to me wasn't just, I mean, I was also a psych and social major. I know you were a psych and religion. I think it was religion major.
Yeah, religious studies. Yeah.
Religious studies. But what stood out to me was a lot of what you described as reading wasn't necessarily just sales. Like, how does a person educate themselves? And so I don't read a lot of sales books. I mean, there's obviously some good sales books. I loved Gap Selling last year and Never Split the Difference, so on and so forth. And add some leadership books. But I read a lot more psychology, philosophy, type books. What do you advise for, younger and older sellers to be more balanced in kind of their individual personal development, to be more balanced and grounded in kind of working with prospects and customers?
Well, I think that I think people are overly focused on improving their immediate sales acumen and sales skill set, and I think that better people sell better.
I love when you said that before.
Not better. Everybody says better salespeople sell better. Well, the only way to be better salesperson is to become a better person. And so why don't we spend more time working on that? Well, you're a better person if you have, at least to me, a diversified batch of experience and knowledge and perspectives, right? So I have just never been somebody that read every sales book in the world that's out there. I don't learn that way and get motivated in that way. I read books like The Alchemist, and you know, I've talked about Dan Millman's books and The Way of the Peaceful Warrior and things like that, and Into Thin Air by John Krakauer, I think is his name. Like, I read things like that are a bit philosophical, have to do with kind of some psychology of things and overcoming challenges and struggle. And what I do is, as I absorb this content, I apply it through a lens of my profession, right? So I'm not interested in reading 42 new ways to make cold calls. Like, that doesn't do it for me, okay? I want to know more about life and the way people think and why humans behave the way they do. And how do we stay calm and peaceful inside when we're suddenly doing 4 or 5x the amount of work, or juggling all these new things on our plate that we're not used to?
How do we stay quiet in the midst of the storm? I think I know you used to be an athlete as well, and I call myself a poor man's college athlete that never went anywhere as well. But I think that mentality, especially and this is not just sales, but when we're striving for a peak state, right? I think it's the easiest way to correlate that is like peak performers and athletes. Like, who do you want in that fourth quarter taking that shot, or coming up to the plate, or whatever it is? You want somebody that can quiet the noise and deal with it in the midst of chaos. A recent read I read was The Art of Learning. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Yeah, of course.
So Josh Waitzkin was the chess prodigy. His dad actually wrote the book that was motivated the movie, but Josh Waitzkin wrote a book called The Art of Learning, and the half of it is all of his principles to stay in a flow state as a chess prodigy. And the second half of his life, he found Tai Chi and Buddhism. And it was a great read on, maintaining an extended period of flow while in the midst of this chaos with these different modalities that he read. So that was a recent read I read that I was like, wow, this one really resonated with me. Yeah. I know we're running up on time a little bit, Scott. I want to be sensitive of your time. One question I had for you kind of before we start to close things out is on building, an individual personal brand. And I know you and I have briefly talked about this, and Justin, who you host Thursday Night Sales with, has a, LinkedIn sales playbook. And, I only over the last year really started to be more active. And some of the challenge I have is, hey, my personal interest and beliefs versus my professional interest and beliefs. And when you and I spoke a month ago, you had just shared about just continuing to provide value, continue to build things organically. As you mentioned, I don't use any bots and automation myself. It's a personal schedule thing. Any advice and guidance for, people like myself that are early in building that online presence and And just, you know, because the one thing that always stood out to me is we've talked about is your true authentic self, regardless of if it's right in that one lane of, you know, consulting that you do, right?
Yeah. I think it's pretty easy. You talk about what you know and talk about what you love. And it's that simple. So, you know, whether you have been in sales and leadership for 30 years, or, you know, you're in your first year fresh out of college, like, what are the things you know? I mean, you were an athlete, you can apply those things. You're passionate about, you know, you and I have talked offline, you're super passionate about all this like metaphysical stuff and all the science of everything. So talk about that stuff, because that's what you know and that's what you love. And if you talk about things you know and love, it's going to ring true with your audience. I think people fall into a trap of, you know, well, what's like the hot topic right now, right? So the hot topic right now is like, you know, in March, it was like sell with empathy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know, I don't want to hear a new graduate tell me to sell with empathy who has 6 months total SDR experience in their whole entire life. Like, that doesn't ring authentic to me. If you're that person, talk about how hard it is to start and launch a career as a new grad in the middle of a pandemic. Talk about how hard it is to get onboarded remotely in your first ever job. Those are authentic, right?
And relevant. Yeah.
And relevant, but don't try to game the system. Like, you know, if you haven't built and scaled sales organizations, or you haven't built and scaled a company, I don't know that you should be talking about leadership yet, because you haven't done it, right? Now, that being said, there are some people, and Justin and I disagree with each other on this a little bit. Like, he's very much like, stay in your lane, pick this one topic and go like super, super deep on that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I can't pick one topic. You know what I mean? If I feel like talking about cold calling, I'll talk about it. If I feel like building and scaling a sales team, I'll talk about it. If I feel like getting a little bit philosophical, that's what I'll do, right? But the authenticity comes from, I have been around a while, and so I have the experience, and I'm only talking about things that I'm passionate about, and I can't fabricate content. So like, I don't buy into the philosophy of you have to post every single day, 5 times a week, consistently, 8 a.m. every day. No, I only post when the spirit moves me. If the spirit is like not compelling me to write something, I don't write shit. And it doesn't happen. So you'll see, if you follow me, you'll see some streakiness. I'll go on a run where, like, you know, a week or two, I'll have a bunch. And then I'll go on a run where there's a week or two, and I might post once in the 2-week run. And I think that's what I would hope people who are trying to build their brand online spend a little bit more time being cognizant of, right? Talk about what you know and talk about what you love.
Yep.
That will have the authenticity, you know, shine through. And eventually, you know, people who get outside of that end up building a brand that becomes less authentic, and those get sniffed out pretty easily by people who've been around for a while.
Well, you do a great job, Scott, of just breaking it down real simply, real concise, and I'm sure it wasn't as easy as it is today for you. I always like to ask a guest, you know, before we sign off, what's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self that's just getting started in kind of either a career, a business, you know, like just that one thing, hey, I wish I'd started this a little bit sooner in a tactical way to get started.
Well, I wish I would have started my career sooner in hindsight. You know, I never even had a job until I was 27 years old. So, you know, in hindsight, like, what a massive miss that is. You know, I was going to college in the Bay Area in the late 90s, which was right around the time of the first .com boom. I didn't know a goddamn thing about .com or tech, or I graduated college without having an email address. If you can believe that, right? So like, I missed that. So the advice I'd give myself would be to get started sooner.
Okay.
You know, to spend more time when I was younger thinking about what I really wanted to do and what I was passionate about and how I could make money doing that, and just kind of candidly just like giving a shit about my career. So that if I go all the way back, I'd go there. In leadership roles, and once I had my career, I think I would have kind of consciously tried to take a few bigger swings.
Okay.
You know, I built a few companies up that, you know, were nice companies, low 9-figure kind of opportunities. Well, the amount of time and energy and effort that I put into those is the same as the amount of time and energy and effort I would put into building $1 billion company, right? So I don't think I did a good enough job really looking at like potential market cap.
Okay.
Because if you're going to dedicate a couple of years of your life, like the payoff
Take a shot.
might as well be huge, right? And so that's something that I think, you know, if I ever did go back to work for somebody else or build something myself, you know, like a software product or something like that, it would only be for something that I thought was a really, really massive opportunity.
Gotcha.
You know, I'm not interested in like, you know, building a company that sells at max for $50 million.
Yeah.
And, you know, I take home 150K. Like that's not what I'm here for as a
That wouldn't be the swing there.
No, if I'm going to build something as a head of sales, again, it's like, what can be, you know, $1 billion, $2 billion opportunity. And if I help grow it for a few years, you know, my take home will be life-changing.
Yeah.
Right. So I would take some bigger swings, I think.
Okay. That's awesome, man. Hey, where can people find you? If people want to follow your content, look you up, check out your services, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
You know, I got my hands in so many different cookie jars. The easiest place to get a hold of me probably is LinkedIn. That's where most people probably know me from. I run the Surf and Sales podcast with my co-host, Richard Harris. You can find us there on Spotify and iTunes and everywhere else. When we go back to being able to do travel and fun events and stuff like that, surfandsales.com is our website for micro sales and leadership conferences. My main business is as a strategic advisor to early stage companies. You can check out what I do there at scottleaseconsulting.com. Thursdaynightsales.com is community that I host with Amy Volas and Justin Welsh.
How many weeks running now?
I think this is week 19 or 20 in a row now. You know, I wrote a book a couple years ago, as you mentioned, called Addicted to the Process. I've got a second book coming out at the end of this year. It's a to be determined title still, but the book coming out is all about the life of a VP of sales. So a little bit different kind of subject matter. And I have my own Patreon account where I do kind of private coaching and training for small groups and, you know, just some additional content that I put out. So any and all of those is a long.
And I'll dump them all in the links to the comments, guys. That's a lot of them. But yeah, I'm sure for anybody that hasn't, you know, checked out Scott, you know, please do. You know, I continue to be impressed with your servant leadership and giving back and teaching, you know, old fogies like me what I need to do to be successful and smarter and more mindful. Really appreciate you coming on, Scott.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Ellie.
Likewise.